We are live now.
Mayor, we're live.
Thank you. Well, welcome everyone. I call to order the meeting of the NVTA Finance Committee for Thursday, February 8th. First, I have approval of the January 11th, 2024 draft minutes. Are there any changes? Okay, hearing none, do we have a motion to approve? We have a second?
Sorry.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Thank you. Next, we have Mr. Longy, FY25 Local Distribution Fund Budget Guidance.
Thank you, Mayor. We'll be going through the three budgets again tonight, starting with the local distribution fund. The key part of this budget is item E, 2E, where we go continued budget guidance, which means that we will continue to pump out the 30% distributions as long as the jurisdictions have met their annual certification, regardless of any differences, which is usually we get more revenue than we're budgeting. So that's just so we don't have to come back to the committee and to the authority for a budget adjustment. The only thing that can happen with those funds is for them to be distributed to jurisdictions. So there's really no other option as long as every jurisdiction meets its certification, which every jurisdiction has met its certification for as long as we've been doing this. To flip over to the table on the back of the page, you can see the four revenues. The sales tax, the transfer from the Interstate Operations and Enhancement Program, grantor's tax, and then that $20 million transfer that we get from the Northern Virginia Transportation District Fund. Again, the numbers that you're seeing here represent 30% of the total revenue. So total revenue anticipated for 2025 is $430 million. We anticipate sending out $128 million and 30% to the jurisdictions based on where the funds were raised, so where the sales tax transaction occurred. With that, we don't have any carry forward or opening fund balance because we get it all out there, and we don't have any ending fund balance because ideally everything is sent to the jurisdictions by the year. With that, and that's our simplest budget. I'll be happy to take any questions.
Questions for Mr. Longy?
So moving to the Regional Revenue Fund budget, this is the budget that the projects are paid for from. So this is where the 70% of that 30-70% split lands. And the items in the note column on the attachment are keyed to the staff report, and I'll just work through that fairly quickly. The first thing that we have is the revenue. We have the four revenues that come from the Commonwealth, as we just discussed. COVA interest, by the way, is interest that's earned on our funds while they are in possession of the state. And we don't have any bond proceeds because we're not selling bonds. And then we have the investment portfolio earnings, which are estimated to be $35 million. When you look at in the probability of grantors has a potential for not making its budget, you can tell that the portfolio is becoming our second largest source of revenue. I want to touch on the future financing, future appropriations item. You'll notice the last 2 years, there's no number in there. Just to refresh the committee's memory, that is something that accounts for the forward appropriations that we do. Several years ago, actually more like 7 years ago, the authority started allowing projects that could advance to receive forward appropriations. Typically what would be done there would be some sort of debt financing done, but we use the strength of our own balance sheet to basically fund those projects. We went through a long effort with our external auditors to make sure that we had controls on that so we wouldn't end up over our skis and having appropriated out more revenue than we actually have coming in. We don't have to make an entry there, although we did go through those calculations, and there are two substantial forward appropriations in this budget that staff are recommending. We didn't have to make any entries there because the 24-25 update to the 6-year program had, and this isn't in the table, had a total of $540 million approved in it. Thus far, we've done appropriations for those projects. I believe there was 21 projects in there. We've done appropriations for those projects of $203 million. And we've done forward appropriations of $169 million. 161 of those, the committee will be passing judgment on tonight. And again, they have staff recommendation. And then we did an $8 million one last year. So that leaves $166 million. So it kind of shows that the projects aren't moving, and it's giving us an opportunity on the upside to finance the projects that can move faster without having to go to the bond market. But on the downside, it does show that the projects aren't moving. So we're looking at total revenue of $335 million. From that, we start to take out the expenditures. The first two are principal and interest on the bonds that we sold in December of 2014. The next item down there is just modeling license support for the technology that we use for project evaluations, et cetera. We don't have any transaction update expenses. The $2 million that you see from last year is the PDP BRT, the Bus Rapid Transit project. We have total recommended appropriations of $298.8 million. And on the staff report at item 2B4, Loudoun County has several requests. Arlington County has one. Prince William has a forward appropriation of $53 million. Fairfax County has 3 appropriations, 2 of which were set up for the 24-25 funding program, and a $108 million request as a forward appropriation. And again, staff is recommending approval of all of those. Are there any questions at this point?
Yes, ma'am.
So, I have a couple questions. When you say forward appropriation, is that like for design build or for design? What does that mean exactly?
When we appropriate money, we appropriate the whole project amount. These are projects that could have been approved in the 26-27
funding
programs.
But they can use the money quicker, so they don't have to wait until fiscal years 26, 27.
Ah, so
Yeah.
they're more shovel ready then.
Yes.
Okay, interesting. And then the second question is, so we are getting through the session. We talked about this at GPC, and we have had no one even look our way, and we talked about this and that and those things. Are we not for this year as much because we're almost through the session, but going forward, at all worried at all again about how much money we'll be sitting on when it comes time for people who need the money?
I think it would be helpful if projects move faster.
Yeah, because this was my exact concern in 2018 when this happened. That was what I warned about, what I talked about, and then it happened. And so, yeah, okay. So I guess all of us go back to our home jurisdiction and say, get it moving.
Certainly
Well,
the expectation
yes.
of the public.
Yeah, and I will say it's always a concern. We're always watchful of that.
After 2018
Yes.
especially.
And we try to emphasize, ask for what you need when you need it.
Yeah.
I know
Yeah.
people like to hold money and try to use it to leverage other revenue sources.
Oh, yeah.
But please ask for
Don't
what
do
you
that.
need. And it's to the point, we have policy 29. I can't remember the official title of it, but I call it use or lose. But we have some projects that probably should have been closed out a while
They didn't use
ago.
them.
Well, some projects are finished, other projects
installed
for whatever reason.
Okay.
I will add for Supervisor Walkinshaw, I'm speaking in an elevated tone for Mayor Rochelle.
Yes.
I don't mean
yes.
she's shouting. I also will note that the rest of the committee is well aware of this. The investment portfolio, which is about 1.7 billion and generating 35 million in additional income, all of that money, down to the penny, is assigned to a project.
Yeah.
So were revenue to be cut for the authority now, the authority would have to go and start selecting projects that it's going to defund.
And that's really what we pushed really hard this since 2018, that debacle, is that money's not just sitting there collecting dust and or interest.
Yes.
It's actually appropriated for something.
Yes.
And kind of the question we were asking to legislators is, so which one of your projects do you not want funded in your district when you take this money away from NVTA?
Yeah,
So-
and then just to Chair Randall's question about design build, I think that is the case with the Fairfax County Parkway South, which goes a little bit through my district. VDOT actually came to us and said, we can do design build and speed up the project. So maybe that doesn't work in every situation, but in that case, it has sped up the project and allowed the money to move, so.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Mr. Snyder?
So my question is a finance question. What money are we forward appropriating? Is that money we have or money we assume we'll get in future years?
It is money we assume we'll get in future years, but it's cash that we have on hand now.
So what if something goes wrong in future years? You advance appropriate it. Does that mean that people that would have thought that the project that they had with the money are then not going to be able to do those projects? I'm just trying to figure out. What do you mean when you say forward appropriate?
That's a very good question, and that's why we have that line, future financing, future appropriation finance if required. Let's say our revenue went down or the project sped up and started projects that had a fiscal 20 appropriation, haven't spent the money, suddenly starts to spend it, that cash availability now collapses. We have $120 million working capital reserve, which is what we go to first. So that's our first cushion. The next thing we would do is based on how fast that disconnect is occurring. And I think we're not going to wake up one morning and see this. It would happen over time. If we were
like either alternative, but many of them.
when we were to see that coming, if it exceeded the 120 million, we would then go to probably short-term financing, et cetera, et cetera. And simply all we're doing is we're losing that interest expense that we're saving by using this process. We would start, taking out some short-term loans or issuing debt. We still have a AA+ credit rating, and we haven't bothered, frankly, to go back and evaluate our financing capacity. The last time we did, it was 1.6 billion.
So let me see if I can get this straight, just so I understand. When you use the term advance appropriating, you're using cash on hand to advance fund projects that would otherwise be funded with money in future years.
In out years, yes.
And the out years. So they're not going to get double funded. In other words, that's clear.
Yes.
So you've just outlined some things to do if the worst case would happen in future years. You didn't get the money that would be used for future projects, but also to replenish the cash on hand that you use for the future appropriations. And how much are we advance appropriating?
Currently, based on the fact that we didn't have to put an entry in there, our prior advanced appropriations have pretty much been caught up to their fiscal years. And we go through this calculation as part of our PAYGO analysis that we'll be presenting later on this year. And it's, the auditors come in and check it. This is a unique process. Normally, external auditors in a county or city would take a very disapproving view of what we are doing. And it took a lot of discussion with them to say, let's do this so we're not having to sit on a huge investment portfolio and at the same time issue bonds or take out loans in order to allow a project to move forward when it can't. And so they
So
take,
you're saving what would the bond, the additional bonding expenses by doing this. That's good. And then I'm just trying to figure out if anything goes wrong in future years, what happens to that reduced pot of cash for other projects. That's all I'm trying to figure.
if things were to go wrong in future years, again, it's something that would happen, I think, very slowly. It would happen over a number of fiscal years, and we'd see it coming because of what we put in place. We first have to go through that $120 million. Then, and if you look at this year, last year, if you look down here, we appropriated $19.8 million to projects. This is a good year because we like to see money getting committed. It's just under 300 million, and we're sitting on 120 million that can be used tomorrow to resolve any disconnects. That would also give us the time to, again, depending upon where the mismatch was, we could choose to get a short-term loan, or we could choose to start issuing bonds.
Okay, and the auditors are okay with this?
Yeah.
As long as we go through the process that we're going through.
Thank
Because
you.
one of the alternatives, and we don't want to do this, if your project isn't moving, then we could make a recommendation, cancel the project, and you come back and reapply, and now the money is freed up. We don't want to do that. Every project is unique, but that's another alternative to having those funds available so they're not up. I don't want to say tied because all the projects have the funding associated with them. But if a project can use the funding sooner that was in the out year, we don't want to be perceived as just sitting on all of this money. We heard a lot of that in 2018. They have all of this money, but the fact that the money was assigned to projects. And what's different from 2018 was at that time we were doing, for the most part, annual funding programs consistent with the fiscal year. Now, as you've noted, we program in out years.
Okay, good. I just wanted to try for the worst case. That's all.
At what point would we go to market versus touching the 120 million? At what point?
We would probably hit the 120 million first. And then if we still needed to go to the market on a short-term basis, we always think in public finance of 20, 30-year bonds, but 5-year bonds or even a 5-year letter of credit is a much more flexible instrument, for us to use. We would probably go to a letter of credit so that we could pay it off a lot earlier. We wouldn't have the cost of issuing bonds. There are a lot of options on the table for an entity that's sitting on a $1.7 billion balance sheet. And if you can think of it that way, most of that 1.7 would have to get used up in order for us to start needing to tap the 120 million.
At what point after tapping the 120 million would we go to market?
If we tap the 120 million and we can't replenish it in the next fiscal cycle, then we would have to at least get a short-term loan because our current bonds require or expect that we have $120 million in the working capital reserve. Now, I say that the outstanding balance of our current bonds is about 60 million. So, I mean, this is a weird CFO's job. We want to see our balance sheet shrink because it's getting turned into transportation alternatives.
We looked at by anybody.
Yeah. Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Long.
Okay, now we move to the operating budget guidance, and this one has a bit more of an in-depth spreadsheet at the back of the staff report. And we've indexed it as we did with the Regional Revenue Fund. We've made no changes to what the committee saw last month. It was a little difficult since I was in COVID isolation and remote, so a little difficult to read the room, etc. But the one question we did come away from was the 7% request for the increase in compensation or salaries. And I want to touch on that a little bit. When a county or a city with thousands of employees, or even hundreds of employees, but certainly more employees than the 17 the authority has, when they put a budget increase amount in their budget, let's say 5%, that could actually equate to the capacity for much higher individual employee increases. Because that is just a number on a budget. But that calculation that the counties and cities do include vacant positions because they have vacancies and they actually have vacancy experience. So that's money that's not being spent, therefore it doesn't need to be budgeted. They also have a certain amount of people who are topped out in grade. So, they may get a market adjustment or a COLA, but they probably won't get a merit increase. So a 5%, I'm just pulling a number, but a 5% budget line increase in a locality or an agency could equate to a 7 or even a 10% increase for the individual employees. The authority only has 17 employees. We currently have a vacancy that we're hoping to fill. We don't have folks topped out in grade. The other thing I want to note is NVTA staff's annual compensation increase is 100% merit-based. So they can't, under this budget, they would not be able to get more than a 7% increase. And sorry guys, not every one of our employees in the history of the authority has gotten that full amount. Some have even gotten 0. None of the folks currently here. So I kind of want to, when you look at your number for your budget in your jurisdiction, your budget number can be vastly different than what your employees are eligible to receive. So based on the conversation at last month's meeting, and we had an outline of this, but we had the benefit of getting somebody from Arlington County in the Human Resources Department at Arlington to share with us a survey they do, which is done, which is done HR professional to HR professional. And so we focused in on what individual employees can get. And so if you look at the 23, 24 columns on the far right, a lot of jurisdictions are not only giving fairly substantial raises, they are increasing their steps in the position grades, et cetera, et cetera. And again, most of this, as noted, either came from the Arlington County HR survey or we pulled it from adopted budgets, especially if the budget, not all budgets say what employees are going to get. Sometimes it just says that budget line. But if the adopted budget made that statement, then certainly we are, thank you, we put that there. So with that, the 7% increase is somewhat of a catch-up. The last 2 years for the authority were maxed out at 5%. And I don't know if I'll entertain questions on this at this point, because that seemed to be the issue last month during the committee meeting.
Questions?
So, well, first of all, these are uncomfortable discussions to have with the staff sitting here, but I will first say that I think the NVTA staff is remarkable. They do and I'm obviously back to Mr. Longview, but the entire staff, the communication that they do with the elected officials, I mean, just getting us ready to go do a ribbon cutting is amazing. There's been something I needed or called for that they didn't want. They're almost intuitive, and it's interesting because I don't think every person can look up a group of elected officials, let alone a group of chief elected officials, because we're special. So it's not always easy to work with or for us. I will also say though, that as much as I appreciate this work, first of all, if, you know, I'm gonna trust you all to know what you wanna give, what you should give and what you wanna give your staff. Even if it wasn't just merit, even if it was just for, you know, a COLA, I would support that no matter what. This is not particularly helpful because there's no numbers attached to this. Like, so I see 5%, I don't know 5% of what, to be honest. So that the sheet is not particularly helpful. And if I had questions, my questions wouldn't be answered by looking at this, because I don't know. My goal is to bring people in line with their counterparts in the COG region, in the metropolitan region, who are doing similar jobs. And so if 6% got them there, great. If 12% got them there, that's what they need. If 2% got them there, I don't know that from just looking at this sheet. Having said that, I'm gonna fall back on, I'm gonna trust Monica and Ms. Becker and Mr. Longy anyway to know your employees, to know their work ethics, to know their caseloads are, I'm sounding like a therapist right now, right? The amount of work that they have to do, and what you look for and need from them. So, you know, I'm good with merit, I'm good with COLA, I'm good with whatever you because at some point, you know, Monica is kind of our employee, and we have to trust her to manage the rest of the staff, to be quite honest.
If
I would echo Chair Randall's comments. It's not easy to try to achieve parity. Manassas Park seems to be on a hamster wheel, so to speak, of trying to achieve parity. Last year, 7% is not outlandish for the NVTA, because last year, we are a city of very modest means, and we were able to provide 6% for our employees. Because we have to try to keep up with surrounding jurisdictions.
South Church is just so rich. That's what it is right there.
Alexandria is doing pretty good also.
Alexandria's doing better and better.
Any other questions? Oh, okay.
There are some highlights on the operating budget that it was difficult for me to communicate last month, but I would like to touch on those. Public outreach, that number is bumped up because we are doing our economic analysis, as we do every time we do a 2-year update. We have an outside economic firm come in and place a valuation on that, what it means in terms of benefits to not only the region, but as well as the Commonwealth. Our financial advisor services, we actually, very much with the cooperation of PFM, we both authority staff and PFM came to the agreement to the recognition we were overpaying because we weren't using the services. So very much with the cooperation of PFM, we right-size that, and we can always change it again if we look to start issuing public debt. So that was a pretty significant reduction. Our technology and communications, we had some pretty significant one-time expenses last year. In addition, we've been able to delete a Bloomberg terminal. When we built the investment program, the technology that supports it, we always said it's all subscription-based, so we can right-size it as we go along. Our local travel and commuter benefits, we are recognizing, and Monica, you want to make a statement of the location?
I was gonna wait until my time on the agenda, but I'll say it now. We signed the lease for the new office space the other day. So your meeting in March will be the last meeting here in this building. So after March, we will be meeting in the new space. We're gonna be on the 2nd floor until they complete build out for our 6th floor office space.
Oh, kudos to everyone that worked on that lease.
Thank you, Council.
You did magnificent work in a very brief period of time.
And I get to take some of the credit, but I really just was given reports. I do, like I said, want to thank Mr. Longy, the Council of Council, because it was a lot of horse trading back and forth to get us to the point where we were ready to sign the lease.
Thanks to everyone who did work on that.
We do anticipate working in commuter benefits. We're not sure how that will work, but we think since we're not using local travel because things are so virtual these days, we're looking to convert some of that to commuter choice benefits for employees who choose to take Metro.
Okay. Another question is, when you all get to the new space, can I use the workout room over there?
Yes, you can.
We're gonna work something out.
Really amazing.
It is nice.
It's
Really amazing. Like Olympic level workout room over there. It is.
and plus they provide the towels.
But we have to have our priorities, right?
We do.
The office lease category, as we said, previously we are establishing an account to move these transactions through because this process will span 2 fiscal years, and the auditors will obviously audit that, and we'll do a final report with that. We have actually already started to do transactions because we had to pay our security deposit in our first month's rent, and you'll start seeing that in the operating budget when we meet next month. Professional development, we talked about that line hadn't been changed in a number of years, and we've added additional staff. Professional outreach, again, that's the recognition that people want to talk to our people and want to invite them to events, and so we want to support that. Under the new initiatives, I'm not sure how good a job I did with it last month, but I did sense a whole bunch of questions, but of course I was on a video screen. We have the 5 initiatives that we are targeting, and we are requesting 2 planning positions and a finance position. And Chair Randall, to your earlier point, we benchmark the cost for those positions by looking at the position descriptions for that type of function around the region. And that's one of the ways that as we establish a position, that kind of sets the compensation level for that position, and then also the annual increases, just maintaining the competitiveness for it. And that, hopefully that addresses some of what we were talking about. With that, is there any questions on the operating budget?
Questions? Mr. Snyder?
No.
Supervisor Walker?
So if
If I could, I do one suggestion, that is, what's the benefit to the public of these additional positions? This is the kind of thing they work on, you know what I mean? I mean, you listed it as sort of, this is the title of the position, but why is there a benefit to the public? You may just want to add something along the line in future presentations. And the finance position, one thing that's a big priority for me is to make sure you have the support you need, because we're managing a lot of money. And I want to make sure that you don't ever hesitate to say, I need expertise, I need support, whatever it is you need to make sure that the financial aspects are totally covered. I know you have and we are, but in the future, please don't hesitate.
Thank you.
Because that's a lot of money.
Well, with that, I will say that Mr. Jasper has an 8 to 10 or more page document that supports the 2 positions that will go to the planning operation. So we will look at that and incorporate it in the next report.
An example why if I remember the public, so I agree to have this agency expand.
And like I said, Mr. Jasper has put that balance between brevity and detail. But we will. I hear what you're saying.
That's all.
With that, if I may, if the committee chooses to, we can come back next month and present the 3 budgets again. Or if the committee so directs, it can go to the authority at their March meeting with the information that Councilmember Snyder.
What is the will of the committee?
Going to the March meeting is fine with me.
I'm sorry,
Going to the March meeting is fine with me.
that is likewise fine with you.
Great.
I'll just take that as a directive.
Okay.
In time. So we have the investment report next. And Deb, who is probably our most soft-spoken employee.
I have to be loud. So yeah, so our goal at this point of time is to get high quality fixed income securities with a longer duration. So an interesting article that we saw in Wall Street Journal that actually called our economy as the confusingly strong economy, because the market has been swinging back and forth and going back again, and that will just keep happening. So yeah, at this point of time, we're just going longer duration. So that's all I have.
Any questions for Ms. Sun? Okay, thank you very much. Okay, Mr. Lundy, could you sort of roll the next several together?
Sure. On the monthly revenue report, grantors is struggling. I think every jurisdiction is seeing the same thing. However, our sales tax is keeping us on a positive overall trajectory, for revenue. So I'm not seeing any revenue concerns at this point. On the operating budget, we are well within the prescribed amounts. We don't have any categories that are negative, and I don't see any need for any adjustments in the operating budget.
Any questions? NVTA update, Ms. Bassman?
Yes, we signed the lease, so
Yes.
thank you. And that's all I have, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. We want to thank staff for everything that you do. We know in our hearts that you make us look good. Yep. So thank you. Is there any other business to come before the committee? Hearing none, then we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
The recording is still going.
My network.